Hello all and welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, your weekly look at the IT news of the week. I'm your host, Rich Stroffolino. You may notice this table is a little busier than it is here in glorious Hudson, Ohio. That's because my usual compatriot that joins me from across this great nation of ours, Tom Hollingsworth, the birthday boy himself, is sitting directly to my right. And of course, we have the big boss, the grand poobah, if you will, of the Gestalt IT universe, Mr. Stephen Foskett, sitting to my left. You're right, I guess, if you're watching the video stream because of the nature of optics. Okay, everyone's pointing. This is very confusing. There's a lot more distraction here than I'm used to, and quite honestly, it's flustering. So we're going to run down the IT news of the week, and the big news of the week really is coming from Microsoft Ignite. It's kind of a news black hole that's sucking up all the other attention, and we just have to talk about it. And a lot of interesting news coming out of this. It seems like this year, and you guys, kind of jump in on this if you will, it seems like Ignite this year has a lot more energy, a lot more buzz about it than maybe we've seen from, maybe that would have gone to some of the other Microsoft properties in years past, something like Build or some of their other conferences. Agree, disagree?
I agree, and I think it's partially because of what Satya Nadella has been doing in the background. He's not just been hiring developers. He's been hiring people who have a platform, people who are social, folks like Jeremiah Dooley, Pumla Schmidt, Ashley McNamara, Sonia Cupp, some of those names that you've probably seen from Tech Build Day, because they're getting the word out about what's going on in Ignite. It's not just a quiet little sleepy Microsoft conference that Ballmer shouts on stage anymore. This is the real deal, and the announcements coming out are all focused on things that people are worried about in IT, and so it kind of is like the perfect storm, if you will.
Yeah, and also it really helps that he's not constantly flop sweating throughout most of the announcements at Ignite, and it just sounds cooler than Build, right? Ignite,
pretty much.
Although if you think of who's the guy that used to be at Microsoft and then he burned Nokia to the ground? Stephen Elop. Yes. His burning platform really did Ignite and took him over to Microsoft land. So I thought we would run down some of the announcements coming from Ignite. It's a really stupid reference, I apologize. I thought we would come and look at some of the announcements coming out of Ignite and kind of get a big deal, no big deal, gauge how important they are, and maybe just discuss some of the implications going out. So one of the first ones that really caught my eye was about Windows Search. Now, you can see here we have a couple of MacBooks sitting here. So Windows Search maybe not something that we use on a day-to-day basis, but I think we can all, like Spotlight Search is kind of awesome, right? We all like doing that. Microsoft is kind of going to be building some interesting search goodness into their properties. They're going to be unifying all their offerings on Edge, Bing, Windows, and Office apps, and putting those all together. Thank you, Stephen. And putting those all together into a unified offering. So when you search, you're not just going to get your local Windows files. You're going to get whatever's on Office 365 and your SharePoint on any Edge devices, and even integrate some Bing searches. So big deal or Bing deal? No, big deal, no big deal. Stephen.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it is a big deal. Everyone's been trying to figure out how to search past Google, essentially, and Google is obviously killing it in internet search. And unfortunately for Microsoft, they've just I don't remember the name of Microsoft search engine, but whatever it was, it really was a distant, number two.
Number not one.
Number not one. And this idea of unified search, I think, is a great idea. The fact that they can integrate data sources that that Microsoft or that Google doesn't have is a great idea. Personally, I'd like to see another company get into the search world with unified search, because it is a good idea. Unfortunately, it's really only a good idea for people in the Microsoft sphere, and that's frankly a declining group of people these days.
Yeah, and the question then becomes, what happens for all your stuff on Google Drive, on Dropbox, all your other third-party services? Is Microsoft going to build the hooks in? Satya Nadella, Microsoft maybe does, Tom.
Yeah, my biggest issue with Windows Search, I use it infrequently, but more than never, is that Windows Search currently has no way to define that you want to look for something on your desktop. So if I want to search for a file by a specific file name or by a string in a file, what I get is, here are 47 things on the internet that match the string that you searched, and I'm typing it from the search bar on my start menu. If I'm typing something from there, shouldn't you look on my machine, then in my drives, whether they be virtual or not. And then maybe if nothing matches that at all, then look on the internet. It's an ordering issue. We know Google wants you to find things on the internet because you can sell ads for people on the internet. But if you're Microsoft, maybe bing, put it local, then internet. Make your search engine useful for people using your operating system.
Which is, interestingly, how Spotlight works on Apple products.
Well, and this does also raise some implications for third parties that are kind of trying to do this, as an all-in-one situation. I'm thinking of a company like Cloudtenna, for example. This is kind of, what they've been rebranding themselves to do, maybe not integrated on a desktop level. So interested to see what the industry shakeup will be there if this is as successful as Microsoft obviously thinks it will be. The next big announcement is Microsoft Virtual Desktop. This will essentially allow a multi-user Windows 10 experience with, and this is key, I think, Office 365 Pro Plus. So you're talking about all of your Skype for Business, your Microsoft Teams, a lot of the advanced Microsoft Office features, all running on Azure. And the key thing, another key thing, is that they have a lot of partners for integrations on board, including Citrix, CloudJumper, FS Logics, and a lot more companies. There are just a ton of them. Those are just kind of the three that stood out to me, possibly also alphabetical. It'll roll out to Windows 10 Enterprise and Education editions. So big, virtualized Windows as a service. Big deal, no big deal.
Big deal. I love this as well. I mean, I feel like this actually has a lot more impact than the previous discussion on search. Having basically all you could want in a Microsoft desktop just sort of available when you want it. Cool.
Thus, I quote from RFC 1925, Rule 11, every old idea will be reproposed as a new idea. These are the 1990s net PCs. What's the minimum viable product that you need to get somebody running on a PC? And for most entry-level knowledge workers, it's a keyboard and Office. And that's 78% of their job. Here we are.
Weirdly enough, this seems like an idea that Eric Schmidt would possibly come up with.
So would you say that because this virtual desktop might take off, could this in fact be the year of VDI?
If it did, kind of with our conversation last week, cats and dogs would start laying down together, and it would really be the end of society as we know it. I just think, this again seems kind of almost anathema to me in old Microsoft parlance. So this is really interesting stuff. Other big announcements coming out. Hey, who here likes passwords?
I love passwords.
Well, you're going to be very disappointed because Microsoft is making some big moves to a more passwordless future. We already had Windows Hello kind of on the desktop side, letting you use a PIN, use your face. You're just with the sound effects today, Stephen. You're bringing your A game. I appreciate it. About using your face.
I also brought my face, so I can use this.
You can use Windows Hello. You can use a PIN. You can use a gesture, or any which way you want to authenticate. Well, now they're bringing this to kind of more of an enterprise focus. They're going to allow you to use the Microsoft Authenticator app to be able to log into Azure Active Directory connected apps, which are like in the hundreds of thousands. There's a ton of things that this applies to, and you can use a fingerprint, face, or PIN so far to unlock these enterprise applications. So passwordless future, big deal, no big deal from Microsoft.
Big deal. This gets rid of a weak point that Microsoft has always had: multi-factor authentication for cloud-enabled applications. Active Directory actually becomes a lot more robust now. Big deal. If we can just get people to stop using passwords and use authentication like Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, the world will be a much more secure place.
Well, and very interestingly, we also saw this week that Yubico announced a whole slew of new YubiKeys with NFC capability and that kind of stuff. So even more factors. I think what the future looks like is maybe a Microsoft Authenticator app using your fingerprint, and then something. I still would want the option to add more factors to that, obviously. Now, I know the classic is something something you have, right? And these would be two things that you have. So I think there is this isn't the definitive answer, right? This isn't, we figured out how to never use passwords again, but it goes a long way and provides a way to add some security without adding the complexity. I was in a Facebook thread where someone was complaining that they work for a business where you have to change your password every 90 days. And I was like, oh, so you work in a place where your password plus N changes, N plus 1 every 90 days? Because that's what everyone does, right? And that's not secure in any meaningful way. So good first step. I think people are going to want to see some nuance from this, though. That's kind of my takeaway. Next big thing, Cortana Skills for Enterprise. Microsoft released the Cortana Skills Kit for Enterprise, allowing organizations to create custom voice skills for customers and employee-facing applications, which I think is really cool. Is this kind of just keeping Alexa at bay and kind of the momentum around Amazon voice services? Or will we actually see smaller shops making useful interfaces with this? Big deal, no big deal.
This reminds me a lot of what Apple announced with the Siri integration, and that's one of the major marquee features of iOS 12. I think that this is a good thing, but it's table stakes at this point. As you mentioned, the rivals are already allowing more and more integration. I think this is what they should do, and they did it. Okay.
Unless you're a Starfleet officer, nobody cares about doing your enterprise work by your voice. If you don't believe me, Alexa, order 3 cases of toilet paper, confirm.
Hey Siri, play Who Let the Dogs Out.
All right, children. You just activated your phone, Sarah. You got what you deserve. The one thing I'll point out here is, we saw from Mist Systems at Mobility Field Day, they were talking about the very hard work they've been putting into their Marvis virtual assistant, and that they still have a pretty decent, they made a lot of progress, still have a long way to go to kind of integrate that. And what that is, for anyone that hasn't watched the Mobility Field Day presentation, shame on you, is essentially, it's a virtual voice assistant that allows you to open up help desk tickets and kind of analyze network issues all through a natural voice interface. And they're saying we're like 80% of the way there, and it's taken us years to be working on this. So, having that skill kit for Cortana is useful, but again, to get those deeper integrations, you're still gonna have to do the hard, kind of naturalization work on the back end of that. So good tools, and not necessarily a complete solution there. Big news coming, a new partnership from Microsoft, Adobe, and SAP on an open data initiative, effectively better allowing the 3 organizations to develop a standard for these 3 organizations to have kind of a common data standard on cloud, aka Azure. And my question on this is, this makes a lot of sense for these 3 companies, but is this going to lead to Google making partnerships with Slack and Salesforce and something like that, and then lead to Amazon making partnerships with a couple other big companies, and all of a sudden we have 3 different open data initiatives that are all siloed? Or does this have enough pull to draw in people into this so that, okay, yeah, you're going to be under whatever public cloud, but we're going to have some kind of open data standard that's cross-cloud? Stephen?
Apart from the perky photo of the 3 CEOs together, honestly, there's not enough information to make a call.
Okay.
Well, remember that we're going to have 4 data standards, because once Larry Ellison does go to war and he begins conquering cloud platforms by force, then whatever he subsumes into his own world will be the Oracle Open Data Standard. OODI. Or OODS.
Is Oracle Open Data Standard a contradiction in terms?
Yes.
Okay.
But he wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. Some interesting news here. Some kind of figures. This isn't necessarily a product release, but some figures on the growth of Microsoft Teams. Microsoft is now reporting that 329,000 organizations are now using Microsoft Teams, including 54 customers with over 10,000 users in their team, which, to be honest, sounds like a hellscape.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine 10,000 Slack users?
But anyway, the Teams year-on-year growth in organizations has grown 64% just in 2018 alone, so it's grown pretty substantially. And Microsoft now officially is listing in regulatory filings Slack as a competitor, which I think we all know, but at least they have formalized it now. In comparison, Slack is used by over 500,000 organizations and has 8 million monthly active users, of which 3 million are paying, which is actually higher than I thought it would be. But if we kind of tease out those numbers, if we can assume that Microsoft Teams have 10 people per team, they've reached parity or surpassed Slack in terms of paid customers. Big deal or no big deal that Teams is taking off?
Big deal. You published an article earlier this week in Gestalt IT referencing our friends over at Actual Tech Media, and they moved from Slack to Teams and are enthusiastic about it. Now, one of the reasons they are so enthusiastic is because they're big Microsoft Office application users as well, and they love the integration there. I think that amazingly enough, Microsoft is developing a competitive product to an upstart and doing a nice job with it. I mean, there are things to like about Teams. It's not just for, obviously it is kind of just for Microsoft users, but there are a lot of them, and it's a pretty good product. Compare and contrast with Google's competition for Slack.
Okay, so I
don't know what it was, Stephen, but it just was announced that it's being killed.
Also, remember Cisco is competing with Slack.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
So we're a Google Apps company here. I don't think we're telling secrets out of school here. I didn't realize Google had one. I was like, wait a minute, this is like a perfect opportunity for Google to come out with their own Slack competitor. Clear this, and then I realized, oh, there's what is it? Hangouts. Hangouts' chat is their Slack thing. I don't know. I logged into it. It's just the worst. There's so much wasted.
The icon for Hangouts should be a crowbar, because that's what Google tries to do with every other service to get Hangouts involved.
Well, it's like in the old days when Bob Medcalf said, we don't know what the future of networking is going to be, but we're going to call it Ethernet. We don't know what the future of Google's voice chat text system is going to be, but by God, they're going to call it Hangouts.
So then, Tom, I guess the question though is, who and when is Slack getting bought by?
Slack's not going to get bought. Slack is on an acquisition spree, and they're spending unicorn money as fast as they can. They actually bought an email program today. Slack, the program that wants to kill your email, bought an email program and killed it.
I'll take that bet. Google buys them for a gazillion dollars 3 or 4 years too late.
Nope. I think that Slack will eventually crumble under its own weight, and it will kind of wither and die, and we'll see next-gen chat, Office apps, and honestly, I think Teams will outlive it, mostly because Teams has something that Slack can't get right now for free, which is integration. Slack is having to pay a fortune to integrate with all these other systems, and it feels like a crowbar. Like they should be like the impact wrench, because we're bolting things onto Slack as fast as we can. And if you're,
we got a crowbar over here, we got an impact wrench over here, and we got Teams in the middle.
Yes, that's the 3 gigabytes of memory question: is how long can Slack keep bolting things on?
Yeah, to me the issue is, Tom, I think I'm a little bit more in your camp here in terms of the future for Slack. As much as I enjoy Slack, and I mean, and compared to using email for like inter-team communication, it's still vastly better. For all the problems that Slack has, I vastly prefer that to like this incredibly complex thread of emails or something like that. But I do think like within 2 years, Slack is just going to keep grafting junk onto itself, and then they're going to release like a skinny Slack.
Yeah.
As you know, and then they go pay only for the full premium Slack or something like that, and then that will be the death knell of Slack. Speaking of which, I saw Evernote release templates unrelated to that discussion.
Evernote exists?
Yeah, Evernote still exists, and still disappointing me every single day. So 2 other kind of issues here, and kind of both related to hybrid cloud. We had talked, Tom, I think a little bit, and we had published a piece on Gestalt IT kind of talking about Azure hybrid cloud benefits, which I think is a really cool idea by Microsoft, basically taking the Windows tax of the cost of a Windows license and then kind of giving you some freebies in the cloud. I think is like a really...
Cloud benefits?
Yeah.
Cloud with benefits?
Did you read the headline of our coverage on Gestalt IT, Stephen?
I don't read Gestalt IT.
You're not wrong.
Oh, no.
But yes, the joke has been made.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, so we got some new, some kind of hybrid cloudiness announcements coming out of Ignite. One of which is that on Azure Stack, users can now run Kubernetes. So kind of cool. Azure Stack getting more. And then we had some details about SQL Server 2019, and that's going to include the ability to extend with Cosmos DB to all customers, allowing you to write data to multiple cloud computing regions at the same time. Stephen, I'm sure there's going to be no consistency problems with that, right?
Oh, no, it's a great idea to just write data all over the place. Yeah, just go nuts, go nuts. Honestly, with an enterprise open data standard, it doesn't matter because SAP has got this.
So either one, big deal, no big deal.
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
SQL Server.
All I heard was cloud, blah, 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 and then I stopped.
Tom is the engaged person in the room. Big deal, no big deal.
Well, with the hybrid cloud announcement like Kubernetes, I feel like there needs to be a ribeye right here, because that would make this table stakes, which is pretty much what you have to do if you are a cloud platform and you don't support Kubernetes at this point. Well, other than the fact you're Oracle, nobody cares, because if they're going to be running anything containerized on you at all, it's Kubernetes. That's just the way things are. Sorry, Docker. When it comes
to Docker agrees.
Yeah, and Docker's been running Kubernetes for a while, and that should tell you if much like the fact that Samsung makes parts for Apple iPhones, if your biggest competitor uses you, that's an endorsement. With SQL Server 2019, cloud, whatever. I think that we finally, what is really important though, is we've reached the point where SQL Server can no longer be contained by a single server. It has consumed all available RAM and will now be entering the cloud. So I, for one, welcome our new Skynet SQL Server overlords. When Judgment Day comes, please don't delete my row.
So, you know, a lot of cloud announcements here, a lot of new Microsoft Azure goodness, you know, kind of cross-platform stuff that we've been talking about. You know, I was really skeptical when, you know, they kind of rolled Azure into the Microsoft Server BU, and, you know, in their earnings. And I always thought it was just a move to obscure, like that Azure was doing poorly or something like that. But do we think now, or when do we think that Azure is representing a bulk of that business unit's income?
I think very soon.
Yeah.
Azure is killing it, and Microsoft knows, everyone knows, Azure is killing it, and I think that soon we're going to be asking ourselves, you know, Microsoft makes Windows.
Yeah, imminent. Imagine Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer standing on stage saying, "We don't care about Windows, Office, but what we care about is cloud and collaboration." And well, if you imagine that, your face probably melted like the guy in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, because that's not who they were. This is only possible because they pulled the old thinking out of Microsoft. They brought in Nadella. Nadella has new ideas about the way that things need to work, and he completely reorganized Microsoft. We always talk about IBM. We talk about the way that IBM dumped all their hardware. We talk about the way that IBM transformed themselves into an agile, swift company that nobody talks about anymore. Microsoft is the new IBM, because what they did is they transformed their entire line of business into something that people want to buy. And we are now sitting in 2018 talking about running Microsoft apps everywhere. And Bill Gates would have been so proud.
Yeah, I mean, you can count on one hand the number of companies that have successfully transformed themselves from one leading company to another leading company, you know. And it's so hard to do that, because in most cases you end up killing your core product line, which kills your revenue, which kills you on Wall Street, which kills your company. And so, you know, you can try to transform, but good luck doing it. And Microsoft is actually making a path to do that without killing themselves, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, this isn't so much turning the battleship, you know, we use the old cliche, but this is like turning,
like building another battleship.
No, this is turning the battleship into like the Shield helicarrier, and flying away into the sun, because it's so anathema to everything that we've expected from Microsoft.
This is essentially, if you've seen the video on the internet of the people changing the tire of the car while it's driving down the road, this is essentially changing out the tires for tank treads while it's driving down the road. And when you get done, you're going to have a really badass Fiat.
I like the helicarrier thing.
Helicarrier works.
So if you're interested in kind of learning more about some of the personnel that Microsoft has brought on to kind of make this transition, continue this transition and succeed in cloud, we recently did an IT Origins interview with Pumla Schmidt, who's the Senior Cloud Ops Advocate for Microsoft. It was a really cool conversation. I really enjoyed doing it, so you can check that out at gestaltit.com, along with a lot of my other writing. Steve, where can people find more of your stuff?
Well, honestly, I would say that you can find me at blog.foskett.net, but I haven't written anything over there recently because I've been busy doing all this stuff. Just look me up on Twitter at @sfoskett.
You can always find me Networking Nerd on Twitter if you want the short form 280 character snark version. You can also find me here at gestaltit.com, where I do a lot of writing. My personal blog is networkingnerd.net. I write a lot.
All right, and just a reminder, it is Tom Hollingsworth's birthday, so if you're watching this on Wednesday, please go ahead at Networking Nerd, send him your best happy birthday gifts or GIFs, depending if you want to be wrong or not. So until next time we meet, I'll invite all of our audience and my two co-hosts here to have a super sparkly day. Stephen, can you press the button there? Just press it right there. I gotta tell my boss what to do for me.
Oh, wait, that's a screen. I can't touch that button.
Use the tragic.
Oh, I gotta use the MacPad. Oh, I gotta click here. What do I do, Rich?
So
I don't know.
you need to press down.
Press where?
Yeah, you need to.
Huh?
Just and then.
Oh, and then I gotta press again.
The end button.
And